All right, I'm done with the thing. Howdy. Thomas?
Hey, is this better?
Yeah, everything's good from my end.
Okay. Got a couple of people that wanted to see the debate, so I'm just going to send them the link real quick so that they can jump in and view. If they have any questions towards the end, we can take a little time and answer any questions, and we'll do a little crossfire. At first, I would like to, though, keep it as format friendly as possible. I'll present my introduction, pass it over to you. I'll let you know, and then we'll take turns for main contentions, and then we'll do a little bit of crossfire before we do the questions, if that works for you.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Just one moment, please. I'm not ignoring the debate. I'm just trying to make sure. Hey, Travis. Hey, buddy. Sorry, he's watching. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. Being that I'm the challenger, I will first. I'm here today to discuss the ethicality involved in voluntary abortion as a birth control method. I'm not here to discuss morality of abortion. I feel like that's a very personal question, and it really does vary considering your standpoint. I'm here to discuss the value of abortion under our current legislation, stating how the law says it ambiguously. There are many causes to believe that an unborn child is considered a human. We have several legislative acts and international sanctions that classify them as such. And medically, it does not give any benefit to the mother to go and get an abortion, which is a detriment in the medical society. What I would like to cover today includes all of these points in depth, and I would also like to take a moment to say that this is, once again, not about the morality of abortion. Doesn't matter your viewpoint. I'm not disagreeing whether or not abortion is right or wrong. That is not what's being discussed here today. My name is Thomas. I would like to thank my opponent for taking up the challenge and being so professional about all of this. We've agreed to some set terms beforehand, and with that, I will allow him to make his introduction.
Hey, I'm Max Mills, and I'm gonna explain why Thomas is wrong. I'm never good at opening statements. That's all I have to say. I'll wait for you to make more.
Okay.
I guess I have a question for you.
Is that your intro?
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and start on my main contentions then.
Yeah, let's hear the main contention.
Contention number one. Okay, I'm just going to get right into it then.
Okay, cool.
Contention number one being that under current legislation, an unborn child is defined as a person, and that life does start from birth. This is covered under the American Convention of Human Rights, released in 1998. Also under the Unborn Victims of Violence Act of 2004, defines a fetus as a child in uterus and a person as being a legal crime victim. American Convention of Human Rights notes that fetal right to life from moment of conception is valid, This is fundamentally seen in cases, for example, a murder, where you were to kill a woman who was pregnant, you'd be charged with a double homicide because under the law, that child is a person, it's a child. One of the main contentions that's currently thrown in the opposition is that a woman should have utter control over her body. This is not disputed by myself or anyone I've known. We are not saying that a woman doesn't have the right to do anything to her body. What we are saying is that the child is a separate body entirely. It's a completely separate entity. While it is on the mother to survive in utero, it is not. It has its own DNA and it has its own set of gene sequencing, not merely a part of the woman's body, and can survive without a woman past a certain age. This is seen, hold on a second. This is fundamentally seen in cases where, like I said, women are harmed, not necessarily murdered. If a woman is in a situation where an act is committed against her and her child is lost, that is considered as murder as well. Murder can only be committed against a person. It can't be committed against a cell division. You don't cut someone's finger or a tumor and say that I've murdered that tumor, because the tumor was just a growth of cells. The argument that a child is just a growth of cells, even in utero, is invalid in case of the Unborn Victims of Violence Act of 2004. This is approved legislation, and in order for the child to not be a person until born, we would have to repeal current legislation. And that is my intention.
Okay, cool. So just so we're clear, your argument is that current legislation makes it already illegal, basically implies that it must already be illegal in this nation for us to have abortion. Yeah?
And you can start on your contention now.
That's correct, yeah? I'm understanding you correctly? Okay, cool. So in this country, there are some laws which appear to indicate, for example, the fact that these things are considered double homicide and all the things you listed. I'm sorry, my phone is suddenly going off. I'm going to go ahead and put it on silence.
One moment. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
I'm having a hard time hearing.
Can you hear me now? Hello? Wow, I must be really lagged. I feel like I'm hearing myself delayed.
Yeah, that's better. That's better.
Can you hear me? Testing.
Let me
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get it.
try and see if putting in headphones will help. If I have headphones, I'm not sure if I do, or I can just turn down. Well, if I turn down my sound, I can hear you. So. Sorry guys, we're just having a little bit of technical difficulties. We'll get this fixed up here in a second. We can restart the debate if necessary. I need to be able to hear him in order to understand arguments and be able to form an argument in response.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's
all right, cool. It sounds like we're all good
you.
then. Okay, so your point, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that excuse me, basically under the laws of this country as they exist now, it's already essentially illegal because we have all these laws that define a fetus as a person, and killing a person is illegal. Yeah? Is that right? I'm just going to assume that it is right and continue forward. So in this country, this is a constitutional republic, and the highest level of law in this nation is the Constitution. But like all written documents, a constitution has to be interpreted. So the way that the Constitution set up our government and the way that our government has evolved since then has established that the Supreme Court of the United States is essentially the voice of the Constitution, right? The highest law of the land. And so when the Supreme Court rules on something, that's the highest law. And if for example, within the last year, Oklahoma made a law that made all abortions illegal. And it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court struck it down because this law, this state law, violated a constitutional ruling. And we can point to other instances of this happening where a law was written, and then the law was challenged in the court, and it was challenged until it reached a point where it could be reviewed by the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, "Yeah, oh no, I'm sorry, this violates the Constitution, either as it's written, as it has been interpreted by the Supreme Court in the past." So in the current nation, we have lived under a Supreme Court ruling, Roe versus Wade, where the highest law of the land is that it is absolutely legal up until 24 weeks, which is roughly the age of viability, to abort a fetus or whatever blastocyst. I get all the words mixed up. But regardless, up until 24 weeks, the thing in the womb can be aborted. That's the highest law of the land. If these other laws you listed contradict that Supreme Court ruling, then they're unconstitutional. And if they were challenged and made it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided that your arguments are correct, then all of those laws would immediately become null and void, because the highest law of the land is the Supreme Court. So the laws as they currently stand are that abortion is legal in this nation up to 24 weeks across the board, and lesser laws overruled by higher laws don't indicate that. However, it should be legal in this country. And I'm kind of going on a tangent here. I'm not sure if you want to respond to what I said before we talk about why I think it should. Let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, I'll end it here, and you respond to it, and then I'll explain why I think it should be.
I'm very with the case you referenced. It was 1974, and the result made abortion legal.
Yeah.
It was not in legislation. It was simply saying that the court will not prosecute against it. It was upheld by the Supreme Court, but nowhere in our laws does say that abortion is legal. In fact, there are more legislative clauses to indicate that it shouldn't be legal, in fact, is not legal, than there are to indicate that it is legal. There is a fundamental difference between abortion and necessary treatments that are carried out to save the life of the mother. And in this case, the law cannot be ambiguous. It has to be clear, and it has to be defined in nature. Abortions do not protect women. They subject them to necessary harm. One of a doctor's oaths was not legal binding, but is currently recognized as the basis for what would be considered malpractice. So it in a way it is binding, but the oath in and of itself doesn't mean anything. But they are held to a certain set of operating standards, and one of those makes it illegal to perform an unnecessary surgery. This is not the case when it comes to plastic surgery or an elective surgery. It would be considered enhancing the life of the recipient. The mother does not benefit from an abortion. In fact, she submits herself to unknown harm, and the abortion certainly does not benefit the fetus, or as I will call it, the child as it is defined by current law. Plan B pills are available things like rape, for example. That's a huge issue where people consider rape victims, and if they were impregnated by their attackers, then they shouldn't be forced to carry that child. I think that a Plan B pill should have given, administered upon report when they go to fill out their statement about that. Because at this point in time, the life is still relatively, small. It wouldn't, any small thing could disrupt at that point in time. It's not stable. It's lacking in the basics of functioning life. But life is defined merely by the ability to grow. This is what sets us apart from rocks and base molecules. We can grow and we can to our surroundings, the same as a child utero can. There's an international treaty stating that find it here. The Unborn Victims of Violence Act in 2004, which has been ratified by every country except Bolivia in the Americas and every European nation. From the moment of conception, as the cells grow and are viable, they are considered a child, unless a child becomes parasitic to the mother, in which case both the child would die and the mother would die. It is to be treated as a human. The rights are not applicable because it can't exercise rights, but it is allowed the right to life. There is what else was I was going to say something else up front. Legally speaking, from ethics, ethically speaking, meaning only operating with laws and the current guidance of society, should not be elective abortions unless it is for the benefit of the mother and can only be service to the mother's health. Just because the child has not yet been born does not have rights as guaranteed by legal rights clause in the American Convention on Human Rights, whatever it is, basically stating that the only thing that would be supersede infants' rights to be the rights of the mother to life, liberty, and basic human rights. This basically means that if the child were, for example, in the fallopian, that is fatal for the child and the mother. There's no way around that. Medical termination is not considered an abortion under this law. There is currently legislation enacted, for example, mothers who drink and smoke, and neglectful during their pregnancy, they can have that child taken away from them. Or worse, they can be penalized under the law. There are many alternatives to abortion. If you are unable to care for the child, if you are care for the child, there are adoption, there are foster homes, there are many different options without necessarily killing a viable person, as I believe they are. Infants have memories of the womb. Infants are able to swim and hold their breath as they do in the womb. They start to develop these memories, sound and taste and sights while they are still in utero. Life does not begin at birth. Birth is simply when the infant leaves the uterus, but was already a child. Nothing changed between the moment of baby still inside of me, but I'm currently having contractions, my water broken, to baby has left my body. Nothing has changed on the part of the baby. The baby is a couple hours older. I'm getting a call, please. Hello? Amy? I believe you have the wrong number. I don't have time, buddy. I'm sorry. Okay. Where was I? I think that was my point, my second point, that it is medically irresponsible from a doctor's point to be giving an abortion that is not necessary. In other words, termination of pregnancy, but aborted pregnancy. And there are options.
Is it my turn?
I'll let you take them. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's no problem at all. So you said that the Supreme Court thing that it for some reason didn't count because it's not legislation, and you said that it is true. Maybe you're right. Maybe there are more laws that say that the infant is a person or the fetus is a person, then it should count all these things. But like, it's not a game of numbers. There's one piece of legislation, one legal document that supersedes everything else in this nation. It supersedes congressional laws. It supersedes international treaties. That is the United States Constitution. If we entered a treaty that restricted our freedom of religion, and it would go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would knock it down because the Constitution is the highest legislation in the land. And the Supreme Court does not legislate, but it interprets existing legislation. In this country, what the Supreme Court says the Constitution says is what the Constitution says. What the Supreme Court says legislation says is what legislation.
You can make your second point.
I'm sorry? So when the Supreme Court says that in this nation, according to the Constitution and according to its existing laws, abortion is legal up until 24 weeks, that is the law. That is legislation. It is higher than everything else in this country. It's higher than the treaties you listed. It's higher than the laws you listed. Nothing else matters once the Supreme Court has ruled until the Supreme Court overrules a previous rule. That said, you keep talking about how it's a living thing, and it's true that it's a living thing, but by itself, being a living thing is not sufficient to determine that it's illegal to kill something. And I have a family full of deer hunters who can attest to that. And you say things like infants have memories in the womb, all these things, and I don't know whether that's true or not. What I do know is up until 17 to 19 weeks, a mere, less than a month and a half before the last, the line that the Constitution, as spoken by the Supreme Court, has drawn, 24 weeks. 5 weeks before that, 19 weeks, that's when the brainstem is connected. Prior to that, it doesn't have anything. So you're arguing against abortions as a whole, but then you make all these arguments about late-term abortions, most of which are already illegal, and all of which...
I'll answer to that by saying that the ruling...
I allowed you to finish. However, so the point that I want to make is, A, right now in this country, according to the highest law of the land, it is absolutely legal to get an abortion up until 24 weeks. That's a fact. B, all these things about how it's a baby and it has memories and all these things, these are things that are true towards the very end of the pregnancy, but not for most of it, and not in the case of most abortions. 3, it's legal and it should be. According to a collaborative study from the World Health Organization in Geneva and the Guttmacher Institute in New York, whether or not abortion is legal has no impact on abortion rates from country to country. They did a study of countries across the world and across history and discovered that even if it was illegal, women got abortions at the same rates. There are things that change abortions, that change abortion rates, though. If you have a problem with abortion on an ethical perspective, you should angle towards these kinds of things. The biggest predictors of whether a woman... Are you still there? I don't see you. Hello? Hello? Your video shut off. Okay, well, just in case I can still be seen. Can I still be seen? Well, whatever. Just in case I don't know, because I don't know if he's gonna show up now, and then I'll have to repeat myself. So I'll just chill. I'm gonna check this out from another browser. Okay, cool. Okay, so I can still be seen. All right, so that's what matters because Anyways, I just said this, making abortion illegal doesn't reduce abortions. Here's what does reduce abortions. The biggest predictors of whether a woman will get an abortion are A, whether she is poor. 75% of women who have abortions make less than $23,000 a year. Half of them make less than $11,000 a year. Whether the pregnancy was intended is the second major issue. Half of US pregnancies are unintended, and 43% of those end in abortions. So, there are policies in this country that are fighting to ensure that the poor can afford the health care that they need, and that the poor can afford food, and they can afford housing, and they can afford the things that you need to take care of a child. And it is those policies that reduce one of the two biggest factors in whether or not someone gets an abortion. The second set of policies that reduce the second biggest factors to whether people get an abortion is unintended pregnancies, right? Like which party is ensuring, which political wing is ensuring that people get good sex education, is ensuring that people get birth control, sometimes paid by their healthcare provider. You know what I mean? Like studies have shown that these policies have an impact on how many abortions there are. And I'm going to keep talking because it seems like he's gone, and I think this is an important issue regardless of whether he's here to hear it or not. Abortions rose steadily under Reagan. Under Clinton, they plummeted to 60% of what they've been under Reagan. And under Bush, they plateaued. And under Obama, they fell to their lowest point almost since Roe versus Wade. It is an objective historical fact that pro-choice candidates reduce abortions and pro-life candidates do not. And the reasons are because pro-choice candidates address the actual root causes of abortion, and pro-life candidates pursue legal means that verifiably and provably don't reduce abortions. So if any of the listeners, it looks like Thomas is not here anymore, but if any of the listeners legitimately are passionate about the life of the fetus, about making sure that these babies are able to be born into a world that loves and accepts them and all these different things, then you should be supporting Ways Out for poor women so that they are able to support these kids, and ways to ensure that people can have pregnancies when they're ready, and that's the right path. And that's what I have to say about that.
Can you hear me? Okay, waiting on him to restart. Sorry about that. I guess my internet kind of cut out for a second. I would like to refute a couple of his points that he made in my absence. I saw and heard everything he said. I don't know why my camera wasn't on. First, we're not here to discuss the right or wrongness of abortion in and of itself. What that Supreme Court ruling said was that we are not going to criminalize abortion. We're not going to prosecute this mother for having an abortion. It does nothing to determine the legality of it. Secondly, I'm not here to talk about abortion as an only option for birth control. I'm here to talk about, should it be an option for birth control? And I don't think it should. With as many birth control options as there are on the market, condoms, Nuvia, those bars that they put in your arm, the shot, all these different options available, while they may be pricey, think about what you're doing. Sex has consequences. One of the consequences being pregnancy. If you want to give yourself the convenience of not having to worry about that pregnancy, the options available are limitless. Abortion is akin to murder, seeing as life is defined as the growth of cells and the ability to adapt and regulate and continue living. Murder being defined as ending of life. You can murder another human because they have equality to you. If you were to kill an animal, that could be considered hunting or animal cruelty or however you want to look at it, and in some cases is punishable by law. But when it comes to human versus human interaction with our anthropocentric society, abortion is legally murder. And this has fundamental basis in the fact that I stated earlier. If a man were to kill a pregnant woman, he would be charged with double homicide or 2 counts of murder. So you can't say that the child has no rights under the law if it has the right to recourse, legal recourse. You know, it can be considered a victim. If it weren't, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. Abortion as, there, you hear me?
Yeah, did you hear my rant before? Like, did you hear everything?
I heard everything you said. I don't know why it was showing me not on. I took a second there to refute those points. Did you hear any of that?
I didn't. This is where I am right now. Like, I'm now, we're caught up. So what are you saying? Start from the last thing I said. Yeah.
Okay. Basically, what it stated was that the 1974 Supreme Court ruling did nothing to determine legality of abortion. It simply said we're not going to prosecute women who do abortions. We're going to leave it up to Congress to nail that all the way in and determine whether or not a child has rights, what have you. But they simply stated that under the current law, we cannot prosecute. We cannot bring up any sort of charges against this because it's not defined under law. And that was of the 70s. Since then, legislation has come out. That case that you were talking about was in 1904. The American Convention on Human I apologize for the technical issues, everybody. It didn't happen like this last time. The entire point I'm trying to make here is that whatever your stance on abortion, until we actually get some solid and concrete legislation in here to define what is and what is not a human, what does and what does not have rights. I mean, for fuck's sake, dogs have rights under current legislation. You know? So why can't we protect our children? You can argue that adoption isn't perfect. There are hundreds of thousands of kids every year who reach adulthood having never been in a stable home and foster care for their whole life. To them, I would say, I think you deserve life. Even if it hasn't been the best life, you can make of it what you will. You're alive today. How bad is it? To people who say that foster cares aren't very good environments. Well, I've met a product of foster care. Calvin Samples was a ward of the state, and he lived with me and my family for a little while before he turned, or no, just shortly after he turned 18, actually. And wasn't eligible for state funding, but he was still in school. And he had a verifiably hard life. Sure, I'll give him that. But it was a life. To say that having the baby would ruin the life of the mother, she couldn't give it a good life, is not an excuse. Because there are state-funded agencies that take care of these children, so the mother does not have to. I would rather see state taxpayer money going towards taking care of children rather than terminating them. As of right now, 60% of all abortions performed in America are done so on the taxpayer dollar. There is no justification for this. In the Constitution, life being ended is murder. It's a capital crime. So we can sit here and argue over the definition of life. We can argue over the definition of ethics. We can say that the Supreme Court ruled in its favor, which isn't true. The Supreme Court simply said that until we determine what is alive and what does have rights, we're not going to prosecute. It needs to be determined. I think it has been. So many people have clung on to certain rulings and used them as evidence to support their case. But primarily, I'm talking about from a medical perspective. you have to be a doctor to perform an abortion. And according to the Code of Ethics, that all doctors are required to operate by, or else they would forfeit their license and could be sued for malpractice and potentially serve jail time, states that you cannot perform an unnecessary surgery. And in the case of an abortion, if the child is not hurting the mother, it is not necessary. It isn't. If the mother is going to live, whether the child is aborted or not, it's not necessary for her health or her well-being. Because you can't say that just because she gave birth to the child, she's forced to raise it. No one's ever said that. There's an abandonment law where you can take your child to any hospital, police station, or fire department and give it up. And they can sue you for abandoning the child. You're giving it up to better care than you're able to provide. So you can't say that abortion is for the benefit of the mother. Maybe she doesn't want to give birth. Yeah, that sucks. I'll agree. But she wanted to have sex. In the case of rape, like I said, Plan B pill. Absolutely. That's a completely separate issue. That's got nothing to do with birth control, because you're not saying that, okay, I'm going to be abstinent, so I don't need birth control. Because abstinence is a form of birth control. So if you're practicing abstinence and you're practicing birth control and someone rapes you and impregnates you, well, in my opinion, you are already practicing birth control. The Plan B pill isn't necessarily an abortion. It's simply maintaining your self-dignity. Abortion does not offer that same guarantee. And in fact, the 3 or 4 women that I've spoken to who have had abortions, one of them personally very close to me, related to me, have all said that they felt terrible. That on the day of the abortion every year, they just cry because they think about the child they could have had. And at the time in their lives, they weren't ready to have a baby, but they got to a point in their life where they realized, you know what, it would have been a struggle, but it would have been my child. And I guess he says here, he just sent me a message that he doesn't want to wrestle with the connectivity issues either. So I guess, sorry guys, this is about as far as we're going to go. Any of you guys have any questions in the comments? I'll do my best to answer them. So just, go ahead and post whatever questions you have, and we'll go from there. I do apologize about the connection on my end, guys. This was definitely my internet at fault here, not my opponent. I do feel like he strayed from the topic at hand and tried to focus more on the Constitution and the Supreme Court, but I don't feel like he really argued my point very much. Normally, I would be willing to concede under these circumstances, but at this point in time, I'm going to just leave it as undecided, and I'll let you guys decide based off the arguments we've made in the votes down below. And thank you all for bearing with me. I do apologize once again, and have a great night. I'm going to go ahead and end this debate at this point.